this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
What if mind control is real?
If you could control the behavior of anybody around you, what kind of life would you have?
Can you hypnotically persuade someone to buy a car?
When you look at your car, you're going to become overwhelmed with such good feelings.
Can you hypnotize someone into sleeping with you?
I gave her some suggestions to be sexually aroused.
Can you get someone to join your cult?
NLP was used on me to access my subconscious.
Mind Games, a new podcast exploring NLP, aka Neuro-Linguistic Programming. Is it a self-help miracle, a shady hypnosis scam, or both? Listen to Mind Games on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
You can scroll the headlines all day and still feel empty. I'm Ben Higgins, and If You Can Hear Me is where culture meets the soul. Honest conversations about identity, loss, purpose, peace, faith, and everything in between. Celebrities, thinkers, everyday people, some have answers, most are still figuring it out. And if you've ever felt like there has to be more to the story, this show is for you. Listen to If You Can Hear Me on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Amanda Knox, and in the new podcast, Doubt, The Case of Lucy Letby, we unpack the story of an unimaginable tragedy that gripped the UK in 2023. But what if we didn't get the whole story?
Evidence has been made to fit.
The moment you look at the whole picture, the case collapsed.
What if the truth was disguised by a story we chose to believe?
Oh my God, I think she might be innocent.
Listen to Doubt, The Case of Lucy Letby on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, it's Jill Winterstein, host of the Spirit Daughter podcast, where we talk about astrology, natal charts, and how to step into your most vibrant life. And today I'm talking with my dear friend, Krista Williams.
It can change you in the best way possible. Dance with the change, dance with the breakdowns.
The embodiment of Pisces intuition with Capricorn power moves.
So I'm like delusionally proud of my chart.
Listen to the Spirit Daughter podcast starting on February 24th on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
What is it? It's Behind the Bastards. That's what it is. So what do you got? What are you complaining about? Come on inside Behind the Bastards town and hear about bad people. I'm Robert Evans. This is my podcast.
How did this become a town? What are you doing?
It's always been a town.
What are you doing?
It's always been a town.
What are you doing?
It's like, like Waco. You know, a town like Waco.
I knew it.
Safe little town where the ATF never rambles by.
Oh, Robert.
All right. Well, I feel like that's all the work I should do today. Sophie, do you have any way for me to not do anything but us to have a show this week? You got any ideas?
I don't have a way for you to not do anything, but I do trust.
Daniel, put in a door opening sound effect here.
No.
Oh my gosh, Chris! Hello,
it's me. I'm here to make sure you don't have to do any work by cooing the podcast once again.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Because let me tell you, I'm lazy. All right, let's get started.
Robert,
what are we going to learn about today?
How do you feel about the Thompson submachine gun?
Oh my gosh. Of the submachine guns, it's a pretty good one. If I was going to fire into a bunch of gangsters at close range in like a parking garage, or if I was going to shoot into a bunch of Nazis in a trench at close range, Thompson submachine gun would be high up on my list of things to do that with.
Yeah, unfortunately, you can't make the Thompson submachine gun really in the US anymore, but there's a semi-automatic variant.
You can, yeah.
The semi-automatic variant is the rights to produce this is owned by a company called Car Arms.
They sure are, yeah. Car. They make a lot of lady branded guns, like little pink carry guns and stuff too. I didn't realize they were the ones who owned the only Thompson submachine gun semi-patent.
And they also they famously also made a gun called the Car MK40 semi-automatic pocket rocket, which I'm mostly talking about because the pocket rocket just seems like an incredible name for a gun to me. Yeah. You know, this is a weapon, and you know they make this pivot in the 90s when you start seeing some gun control regulations, and one of the things they do is they make this gun and it becomes, it's a compact 9mm handgun.
Well, the MK40 is a 40 millimeter hand, 40 Smith and Wesson.
Is it? Okay, this is where me not knowing.
Well, I think that
guns.
Maybe there are other versions, but yeah, the one I'm looking at right now is a 40, which would make sense.
True.
40,
it's called the MK40.
40 Smith and Wesson is a large caliber for such a small gun because it's a tiny little piece. They have ankle holsters for it.
Well, the NYPD, early 2000s NYPD just like loves this gun. This is their favorite gun. The police department like allows them to use it on duty, and they call the car MK40 the Mooney gun because it was designed by one Justin Moon, the son of one Reverend Sun Myung Moon. And that is who we're talking about today.
Oh boy.
Sun Myung Moon and his many, and I cannot emphasize enough, he has like 20 of them sons and also daughters.
Great. And one of them's making what I'm guessing is a really high caliber handgun for scared middle class moms who don't want to carry something heavy, but want to be able to shoot what they imagine to be a 6.5 foot tall mugger with a big
it's
bullet.
great. And we are in the next part of this episode. We are going to find out a lot more about the guy who makes this gun, and it is who owns this company right now, and it is not good. It is very bad.
Fucking dope. And yeah, I just looked it up. Those of you at home, if you're finding, it certainly seems like all of the semi-automatic Thompson submachine guns I'm able to find right now are made by Auto Ordnance, which was bought out in 1999 by Salo Enterprises Inc., which is the parent company of Car Arms.
Yeah. And welcome to another theme of this episode, which is there are approximately 1 trillion front organizations and sub-organizations.
Sure, yeah.
And they are founded by a man named Sun Myung Moon, who was born on January 6th, 1920. And hold the date January 6th in your mind. We will be coming back to that next episode.
I've never heard of anything important happening on January 6th. That's bizarre, Chris. Now you freaked me out.
It's the Messiah's birthday. This is the day the Messiah was born.
It's like it would be like something significant happening on the day after September 10th. I just can't get it in my head. But okay.
So put a pin in this thought. Right now it is 1920. It is okay, I apologize to the Korean people for what I'm about to do to their language. Pyongyang Pukto. He's born in a village, a small village in what is now North Korea. And this
it's okay, Chris. As angry as the Koreans are, I don't think their yelling will get louder than the yelling of English people pissed that I can never get any of their street names.
I mean, correct. Look, the problem is though that I have respect for the Korean people. I have no respect for the Anglos, and the Anglos can find me on Twitter at iWriteOK.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's exactly your Twitter account, and I will explain how it should be pronounced Leicester. But anyway, continue, Chris.
Now, Moon is from a pretty middle class family in this sort of rural farming village, and but what middle class means is that he doesn't starve very much. But this is this is still a terrible place to grow up because 1920 Korea, and throughout his childhood, this place is occupied by Japan. People are being like enslaved and dragged off to go fight in the wars. There's this mass campaign to force everyone to speak Japanese, so on and so forth. So it's not a great place to grow up, and
it's a rough time to be in Korea.
It's pretty bad. Now, Moon is a weird kid. He's incredibly stubborn. And I'm just going to read how he describes himself in his book as a peace-loving global citizen. When I was a child, I had the nickname Day Crier. I earned this nickname because once I started to cry, I wouldn't stop for the entire day. When I cried, it was so loud that people would think something terrible had happened. People sleeping in bed would come out to see what was going on. Also, I didn't just cry sitting still. I would jump around the room, injuring myself and creating an uproar. Sometimes I would bleed. I had this intense personality even when I was young. So this is a weird kid.
So definitely like some parents who are pretty sleep deprived. I think we can.
And I think one of the sort of the things with this early childhood is that it's very hard to find information that isn't from the church, and I think part of why he's writing this is that a lot of his sort of early history has been sort of propagandized to sort of fall in line with church doctrine, and I think this is one of those things. Although it's also just like the fact that he's calling himself Day Crier. It's very weird, but one of the sort of church sacraments of the unification churches he's going to found in a little bit is crying during prayer. But and you can see this sort of like he's already like he's projecting himself back like into the story. And part of the other like how this plays out is that when he's 10 years old, his family converts to Presbyterianism, and they are.
And what had they been before?
I couldn't find any records of it. My guess is they were doing some kind of like local Korean religion, because there's a lot of
I don't know much about that. But not Christian, probably.
As best I can tell, not Christian. Although there's not really records of it. But when they convert to Christianity, they go hard. This family is very religious. Moon is incredibly religious. And 6 years later on Easter morning, Moon claims that Jesus showed up to have a chat with him. Now,
well, that's nice.
Jesus tells him that Jesus had in fact failed to save humanity because people didn't believe in him, and that Moon had to go finish the work that Jesus started.
Wow. It's like a reverse Luke Skywalker.
It's pretty wild. And, unlike Luke, Moon is like, no, I will not do this. Like, this is no. And so Jesus spends a significant amount of time just like wearing him down over like the course of days. And then
wow, that's quite an ego when you're like, yeah, Jesus wanted me for this thing, but like, work was really heavy this week, and like I hadn't been able to get to the gym, so I didn't want to put that off anymore. And like, wow, cool. Wow, what an in-demand dude.
Pretty impressive. And there's some question here as to like whether this is something that Moon believed when he was 16, or if he's created it later. And I'm not really sure. My guess is that he's back projecting this because he stays in the Presbyterian Church for like another decade, even though Jesus has showed up to him and like proclaimed him the Messiah. What we do know is that Moon went to Seoul to study electrical engineering, where he and his followers claim that he joins the Korean independence movement and gets arrested for it. And this is another one of those things where like almost every source will repeat it, but they're all going off of his church. So it's sort of unclear. I will say, though, Moon is very, very good at getting people pissed off at him and getting arrested. So it is entirely possible he managed to do this, because he's going to get arrested like 6 more times. And so after this, he spent some time in college in Japan during the war. And while he's doing this, he decides he doesn't want to do electrical engineering. He wants to become a missionary. But he runs into a roadblock, which is that the Presbyterian Church expels him for heresy in 1946 because, he's going around claiming that he's the Messiah, which is...
And man, it's not the easiest thing to get kicked out of the Presbyterian Church for heresy. Like, one of the harder churches to be heretical against, I would suggest, based on my knowledge of Presbyterianism.
I will say the
not a lot of heresy goes on within the Presbyterian Church.
I will say I think the Korean branch is like slightly like the Korean like Presbyterianism. I think is somewhat more intense than like American Presbyterianism. But like, it's you have to go around claiming that you are the Messiah, basically, for them to be like,
I mean, yeah, and if your whole thing is Jesus, some guy being like, oh yeah, that's me, basically, is gonna, folks might have an issue with that. I get it. I get it. I understand the concerns they have. Okay.
So, and he makes a decision that is somewhat baffling to me, which is, okay, so he decides he's gonna go found his own church. But in order to do this, he goes to Pyongyang, North Korea, which is by this point under communist control. And
is that easier? Then I'm guessing it's easier, because like now you would have to like smuggle yourself, right? You would have to break a number of laws in both countries to get in.
Go there. I mean, this is like right after the war. Everything's sort of chaos. It's much easier than it's going to be. But he does this. But also still probably not like a normal decision. And the communists immediately look at this like weird Christian cult preacher who shows up, and they immediately go, oh, this guy's a South Korean spy. And according to Moon, they like torture him and leave him for dead in the prison yard. Now, the funny part about this is that this is the only part of Moon's entire career where he is not a South Korean spy.
Okay. So they suspect him for being a spy for the only period of time. That's fun. That's funny.
It's sort of amazing, and this is another thing. So he claims that he's tortured in prison like a lot, and it's possible. I don't know. I mean, North Korean prisons are not great, but
South Korean ones probably aren't either. Then at that point,
about half of the story is about how just like an absolute like horrifying basket case military dictatorship South Korea is for like this entire period.
Yeah, for a decent chunk of the post-war period, you're doing better if you're up north than you are down south.
Now, his story about this is that like his followers like come get him and like nurse him back to health, and I have no idea if that's true. What I do know is that like 2 years later he gets arrested again for quote advocating chaos in society and gets sent to a North Korean prison camp.
Oh, that is a dope thing to get arrested for. That is a sick thing to get arrested for. Man, I would brag about that fucking rap sheet. That's the coolest thing you can do time for.
Yeah, it's pretty
easy.
Sweet. I will say the prison he gets sent to like sucks. Like they're filling fertilizer bags, but like, you know, they're handling a bunch of just like raw ammonium nitrate, and that's a bad time. But luckily, instead of serving out his 5 years, he's bailed out when UN forces took control of the prison in 1950 during the Korean War. And so they release him, and he flees on foot with some of his followers to Busan ahead of the communist advance in 1951. And this is where, in a tiny shack, he begins to write I should make this clear. Okay, he begins to write Divine Principle. There is another book called The Divine Principle, which is a separate thing. They are not the same thing. This is a source of enormous confusion. Now, Divine Principle it's called the Bible of the Unification Church. It's slightly more complicated than that. I mean, so the Unification Church, which is founding in this period, it's like they have the regular Bible and they have their own interpretations of it, and then they have Divine Principle, which is the thing that he wrote. That's like their like higher holy text. But then there's also a bunch of other holy texts. But this is sort of the main one. He starts writing it, and there was an amazing story about the writing of this from a later church preacher named Kevin McCarthy. Even God said no to Father 3 times when he presented the Divine Principle. Father told God, bullshit. God knew he was right.
Okay. Wow. So this guy is something new. You know, I've done a lot of people who talked to God or Jesus. This is the first cult leader I've heard of who's having like a back and forth where he's like giving as good as he's getting. He's like, wait, that doesn't make any sense. You fucking crazy? No, sir. No, that's not how this is going to work.
He's basically ordering God around. He's ordering God around because like,
look, we stan an employee who's not afraid to talk back to management. You know, this is finally humans are unionizing against God.
It's sort of incredible. And you know, so in 1954, he finally was able to get the soul, and he starts this new church, which is called the Holy Spirit Association for the Unification of World Christianity. And this is what's known today as the Unification Church, or the cult called the Moonies. Now, what's interesting about this church, though, is in the 1950s, it is a very different cult than it is in the 60s or 70s. And the way it's different is that there's a bunch of extremely weird sex rituals where Moon has these like orgies to like purify the women in the cult, because they're like he has this whole sort of theological thing about sin that we'll get into in a second. But basically his thing is like, well, because you have sin from Eve and demons, and you can only be purified by like having sex with me. And Moon starts forcing people to do this. And one of these people is named Annie Choi, who joins the cult in the 1950s. Now, Moon starts to force her to join these rituals when she is 17, and oh boy, is burying 15 to 17-year-olds a huge theme of this episode. It's not great.
Oh boy.
Yeah, big pedophiles. Now, Annie got pregnant from Moon's abuse, but the second most important member of Moon's operation, a guy named Bo Hee Pak, who is a colonel, I think at this point he's a lieutenant colonel, but he's going to become a colonel in the Korean army, covers up the pregnancy. And then literally, once Annie has the kid, Bo Hee Pak literally steals the baby from her arms and then raises the child as his own, passing it off as like his own child, because they don't want it, they don't want it to get out that Moon, had this kid. So
he's doing a little bit of an L. Ron Hubbard there. He's Hubbarding a bit. That's good. Now,
Annie describes how Bo Hee Pak's wife like brings her some seaweed soup after, again, they steal her baby. And his wife's just like, yeah, here's some soup. And Annie,
well, it's better than not giving her soup and stealing her baby. Look, if you like on the moral chart of the universe, stealing baby, no soup, worse than stealing baby, but soup.
It's still pretty bad. And she,
well, yeah, I mean, it's stealing the baby.
Yeah.
But
and Annie's description of it was that she couldn't eat it, and she said, I just sat there crying with my tears falling in the pot. Now, Annie,
that's the downside of soup as a gift after a baby theft.
Now, Annie follows Pak to the U.S. to stay near her son, Sam. And when Sam is 13, Annie tells him the truth that, Sam is actually Annie and Moon's son. And the Moon family, does not take this well. Moon's oldest son, Steve, oldest legitimate son, Steve, who we're going to be talking a lot about later, points a gun at Sam and threatens to rape and kill Annie. So, this is going great. Steve is a real bad guy. We will get into more of his shit later because it's bad. And the sort of consequence of this for the Moon cult is that Moon decides to just retool it. Because this whole sex cult thing is not working, and it's not working because, there's all these kids now that, you have to have your lieutenant steal from the mother, the arms of the mother and stuff. It's so this is bad for Moon.
Yeah, that's not great. Where do you get the gun? Is it easy in South Korea to get a gun?
But this is later on, and by this point, they're in the U.S. Yeah, and I will say though, Moon's people, they have we'll get into this more in a second, but they have a lot of correct connections with the Korean army. Bohee Pak is in the army, so they have a much easier time getting weapons than a normal person would, just because they're so heavily connected to the army.
Yeah, that's not great.
So a major part of this cult's belief is that Jesus had been sent by God to create a new Adam and Eve family. And so Moon sets out to find a, quote, true mother to finish what Jesus started. And he finds that true mother after an exhaustive search by his followers in the form of the 17-year-old daughter of his cook, Hak Ja-han.
Oops. That's not great.
He immediately marries. And keep in mind, Moon is 40 when he's marrying the 17-year-old.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is
It's also not great that my first thought when you said 17 was that is on the older side for cult leaders.
So at this point, this is where the Unification Church stops being the sort of weird sex cult thing that was before, and it starts looking like the modern Unification Church. And this is when Moon conducts the first of the mass wedding ceremonies that the church becomes famous for, in which Moon will just marry off sometimes thousands of couples.
How many folks are there in this cult at this time? Do we have any idea?
Track. Especially in the early period. I think in 1960 there's a few thousands, although it's the numbers of this are going to be extremely elusive all the time. Partially just because its biggest branch is going to be in Japan, and the numbers on that is no one has any idea basically. So yeah, this is a constant source of contention. It's how many people are in it.
A little bit of a black box. Gotcha.
Now, it's this wedding ceremony, these sort of mass weddings that they're doing are very weird. And to get into why they're so weird, we need to talk a bit about what the Unification Church actually believes. Now, the church is it's a mixture of essentially it's mostly based on Christianity, but it has this sort of mixture of Buddhists, Confucian, Taoists, and also sort of local shamanic Korean religious traditions that are all sort of mixed into it. And the main difference from Christianity, other than Jesus being betrayed and not completing God's plan, is that they believe that Eve cheated on Adam with Lucifer before they could be married, and that this is what the story of the fall is. And it's really funny too, because they have these weird interpretations of the Bible where they'll say things like, okay, they'll do this hyper scientific literalism. Well, they'll be okay, so it is in fact impossible for the Garden of Eden story to have happened because snakes can't talk. And they're so clearly this is a metaphor, right? Because the snake can't talk.
Oh, wow. That's an interesting line to draw. Yeah. There's a god with angels who's got magical powers and there's a holy ghost and stuff. But talking snakes, come on. It's an incredible line to have. It's like believing Star Wars is a documentary, except for when you see a Wookiee. And you're well, that couldn't happen. A big hairy man.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. And now one of the sort of consequences of this story about the fall is that so the fall is basically about having sex before marriage, and the consequence of this is that humans all now live outside of God's law and live in the quote unprincipled realm where they serve Satan, And this gives the church a incredible laser-like focus on the traditional family and defeating what Moon calls free sex, or sex outside of marriage. And it's weird.
Cool.
It's a weirdly straight-laced cult, especially for something that like literally started as a sex cult. It turns into this thing where there's no drugs, there's no sex, there's no alcohol, except there's one exception to this, which is the church has a sacrament that you drink at like weddings. In some events, it's a bunch of alcohol mixed together, and it may or may not.
Ew! What alcohol?
I don't know. See, this okay. So there's a whole debate about this because this thing might have Moon's blood in it, and yeah. So the actual composition of this is a secret. Like high level members of the church don't actually know whether or not there's blood in it. Like they have different opinions, and they like sometimes they contradict each other. Moon has both said that it literally is his blood, and then also that there's not his blood in it. So there's a whole running debate as to what is in this.
That's rad. You know what? That critical support. That's cool. That's among the cult leader flexes I've come across. That's one of the better ones.
So yeah,
I'm not going to tell you if you're drinking my blood. You might be.
Yeah, we've got.
What's important is you drink whatever I tell you to. That's what's critical.
Yeah. So yeah, we have Schrodinger's vampirism, but the other thing about this is that this is a very conservative sort of Christian cult, but there's also this like new age thing to it, a new age like sort of edge to it, and you know, for example, they call God's existence in the universe, the prime universal force, and I'm going to read a passage from the divine principles, not to be confused with divine principle. These are two separate things. The Moonies will get extremely mad if you confuse them, even though they have basically the same. Okay, so in this golden age, the highly advanced scientific achievement of the Occident will serve to make the eternal life of the new world convenient and pleasant, and the highly advanced religious and metaphysical achievement of the Orient will provide the philosophy of the new age. Thus, the new age will see perfect harmony between the cultures of East and West. The one unified world will be fulfilled horizontally between the Occident and the Orient, and also vertically between the spiritual and physical worlds. In this unified world, all nations will live in harmonious association with all others and share a common religious philosophy under God's direct guidance. This new age will no longer be regarded as the Christian era. Instead, it will be known as the cosmic era, with the adoption of a cosmic calendar.
Okay.
And you know, this
Fine.
is I think this is you know, this is like one of Moon's strokes of genius, because it lets him play both sides of the religious aisle. For when they're trying to convert Christians, they play up the sort of Christian family value side, and this lets them get in with the sort of the sort of Christian family values, right? When they're dealing with hippies, they play up the sort of new agey stuff. It's genius. It's this they've synthesized sort of by accident, but they've synthesized basically this all of the sort of political and cultural trends of like the 60s all the way through the 80s. And yeah, and the other sort of important aspect of this faith is that everyone is born with like sin from a bunch of sources. And I mean, there's a lot of different like things that give you sin. One of which is like, you know, you have Eve's sin. And so in order to get rid of Eve's sin for, you know, like doing the fall, during your wedding ceremony, the wife and the groom take turns like beating each other with a giant stick. Which
what is this? What kind of wood is the stick?
I don't know. It's just a stick, and it's like it's just a stick.
Just any stick.
Yeah,
huh?
It's kind. I think it's kind of baseball bat esque.
Cool.
It's great. They beat each other with this. And Robert, do you know who else will beat you with a baseball bat?
I mean, the Texas State Juvenile Justice System.
Yeah, that they could sponsor us. That's a thing that might happen.
Yeah, that could happen. Fingers crossed. God willing, you know, if Christ is with us, as He is with Reverend Moon, that will happen.
And yeah, we will have products and services eternally.
Amen.
Hi, this is Joe Winterstein, host of the Spirit Daughter podcast, where we talk about astrology, natal charts, and how to step into your most vibrant life. And I just sat down with a Minnie Driver.
The Irish traveler said when I was 16, you're going to have a terrible time with men.
Actor, storyteller, and unapologetic Aquarian visionary. Aquarius is all about freedom loving and different perspectives. And I find a lot of people with strong placements in Aquarius are misunderstood. A Sun and Venus in Aquarius in her 7th house spark her unconventional approach to partnership.
He really has taught me to embrace people sleeping in different rooms, on different houses, in different places, but just an embracing of the isness of it all.
If you're navigating your own transformation or just want a chart-side view into how a leading artist integrates astrology, creativity, and real life, this episode is a must listen. Listen to the Spirit Daughter podcast starting on February 24th on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
What if mind control is real?
If you could control the behavior of anybody around you, what kind of life would you have?
Can you hypnotically persuade someone to buy a car?
When you look at your car, you're going to become overwhelmed with such good feelings.
Can you hypnotize someone into sleeping with you?
I gave her some suggestions to be sexually aroused.
Can you get someone to join your cult?
NLP was used on me to access my subconscious.
NLP, aka Neuro-Linguistic Programming, is a blend of hypnosis, linguistics, and psychology. Fans say it's like finally getting a user manual for your brain.
It's about engineering consciousness.
Mind Games is the story of NLP. Its crazy cast of disciples and the fake doctor who invented it at a New Age commune and sold it to guys in suits. He stood trial for murder and got acquitted. The biggest mind game of all? NLP might actually work.
This is wild.
Listen to Mind Games on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
What do you do when the headlines don't explain what's happening inside of you? I'm Ben Higgins, and If You Can Hear Me is where culture meets the soul, a place for real conversation. Each episode, I sit down with people from all walks of life, celebrities, thinkers, and everyday folks, and we go deeper than the polished story. We talk about what drives us, what shapes us, and what gives us hope. We get honest about the big stuff: identity when you don't recognize yourself anymore, loss that changes you, purpose when success isn't enough, peace when your mind won't slow down, faith when it's complicated. Some guests have answers. Most are still figuring it out. If you've ever felt like there has to be more to the story, this show is for you. Listen to If You Can Hear Me on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
In 2023, a story gripped the UK, evoking horror and disbelief.
The nurse who should have been in charge of caring for tiny babies is now the most prolific child killer in modern British history.
Everyone thought they knew how it ended. A verdict, a villain, a nurse named Lucy Letby.
Lucy Letby has been found guilty.
But what if we didn't get the whole story?
The moment you look at the whole picture, the case collapses.
I'm Amanda Knox, and in the new podcast, Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby, we follow the evidence and hear from the people that lived it to ask what really happened when the world decided who Lucy Letby was.
No voicing of any skepticism or doubt.
It'll cause so much harm at every single level of the British establishment of this is wrong.
Listen to Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Ah, yeah. Woo.
We're back. People are getting whacked by sin sticks.
We've been a bad influence on
Honestly, most of the weddings I've been to would have been improved if the bride and groom had to hit each other with a bat. I'm just gonna say it. That would make most weddings better for the spectators, at least. What?
No.
Especially if you can hit the priest too.
Yeah, unfortunately, you don't get to do that.
What?
It's just you hit your wife and your wife hits you.
Oh. Well,
yeah, and unfortunately, it gets the sin stuff gets less fun from here because you also have to pay like Judas's sin, which means that in order to get married, you have to pay $120 to the church because that's you have to repay 30 folds Judas's sin of the 30 coins,
Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? That's what makes it okay. That's what God is like. I'm so pissed about this thing that I set up and engineered and knew was going to happen centuries before I ever did it. I'm so angry about it that you got to pay me.
To be fair, so their version in their version of the Judas betrayal, God's plan is not for Jesus to die. God's plan is for Jesus to like found a family, and then what happens is said is that he gets betrayed, and that's the origin of the, like that sin.
All right,
so it makes slightly more sense.
You know what?
But
that makes more sense. That does make more sense. Good on you guys. Sense
is that the $120 price? It's also 120 yen. It's also 100. Like it's just 120 of whatever the denomination of currency is.
Yeah, whatever currency it is.
Converting it from like gold Roman gold coins. It's like it's great.
Well, yeah, it was 30 pieces of like silver, or was it gold? Yeah, because I'm gonna guess 30 silver coins, whatever size they were back then, is probably like a couple grand today. Like I always had the feeling in the Bible that like that wasn't nothing. You know, that was like a pretty good pay for giving Jesus up.
Yeah, but so you have that sin, and there's also other sin. So there's demonic influence in your like historical bloodline, right? And
you know what? They're not far off. According to a random Wikipedia page on 30 pieces of silver, depending on, the size of coin and the value, the type of silver and whatnot that went into it, approximately $91 to $441.
Well, you're not paying for it 30-fold then, though.
Oh, someone else said 90 and 3,000. I don't think anyone knows, Chris. I don't think anybody has any idea how much. Yeah. Okay, please continue.
Okay, so you also have this demonic sin, and with the demonic sin, you have to pay the church $1,400 per generation of your family to purge the bloodline from sin.
It's nice that they went with a flat rate, because some families, like I'm Italian, my family has a lot. You go back a couple of generations, it's way more sins than the present generations. Especially British people. What a deal the British are getting. If your fucking grandpa was with the East India Company or whatever, you're like, holy shit, $1,400 ain't bad.
Well, the funny thing is, you joke about this. One of the things that they do is like they get Japanese women to pay the church like enormous amounts of indulgences as like a payment for the comfort women in Korea. So like they're legitimately doing this.
That's messed. I mean, that's a really complicated kind of horrible too. Like you really have to sit down and think out the permutations of how that's a bad thing.
And it's worse than it even sounds now for reasons that we will get into in a bit.
Boy, I don't like that very much.
And so the more you look at this, the more the church starts to look like a pyramid scheme, right? Because in order to get married, you have to be part of the church for 3 years, convert 3 people to join the church, pay them money, and then Moon or later. Originally, it's just Moon will pick who you marry, but later on, there's church committees that will select who you're going to marry. And you see how this process works, right? In order to get married, you have to bring more people into the church, and then in order to so that's the first process. You bring in your new marks, and then your new marks start paying the church. And so what you have in order to get married, the whole thing of the church's whole ideology is you have to get married, and that like if you're not married, you can't see the kingdom of God and you can't have sex. So this whole cult is designed as a sort of pyramid scheme to it just bring more people in and pay them more money. And so, that's one way they bring people in. The other way is through, sort of like classic cult recruitment stuff. So they have hundreds of friend groups, and, they'll have like a farm, and they'll be like, hey, come to this farm. It'll be a chill time. And so, they do these things where they make everyone chant constantly, and they constantly move everyone back and forth between activities. And suddenly there's this like enormous pressure to conform. And, when you try to leave, they'll be like, oh, well, we don't have any buses that can take you back to the city right now. So it's really inconvenient for us. Will you stay for like a couple more days? And they'll, they a lot of times, like, so the way it usually works is they'll assign like a member of the cult that's like your person, and they follow you around all the time, and you like become friends with them.
Yeah, that's a pretty common kind of thing.
And then when you try to leave, like your friend like emotionally blackmails you into staying. And
more of the hits. They're playing the hits now. The top 40 of being a cult.
This is pretty classic cult stuff, but the scale here is incredible. Now, Reverend Moon or Father Moon as they call him, claims to be the literal Messiah bringing about heaven on earth, and he is trying to take over the world. Like that is the goal of the cult. And it's what Moon, and he's very consistent about this. It is what Moon and all of his organizations are dedicated to him taking over the world. The goal is to crush communism, reunify Korea with Moon as its ruler, and then after he's defeated communism and crushed North Korea, and there's one Korea, the U.S. will like fall in subservience in deference to the superior Korean state, and then they will take over the rest of the world.
That seems optimistic. I'm going to be honest. That seems optimistic.
He was never close to doing this, but he gets much closer to this than like anyone should ever be able to do.
To having the United States bow to Korea's sovereignty?
Yes. He gets closer to this than anyone ever reasonably should. I'm going to read a quote about what his goal is here. Quote, "The whole world is in my hands, and I will conquer and subjugate the world. When we are in battle against the whole of the nation of the U.S., if you truly are in love with the nation, and if you truly love this nation more than anything else, this nation will come into God's possession, and Satan will have nothing to do with it. With that as a bullet, we can smash the whole world." So he just says stuff like this because he's trying to take over the U.S., because he realizes that if he takes over the U.S. and Korea and a few other, and like Japan and a few other countries, he can seize control of the entire world. And the other aspect of this is that he has this spiritual power that allows him to sort of walk in the spirit world with, some of his most powerful followers can do this too. And so he finds and gets, he'll find world leaders in the spirit world and get testimonies from them. So here's some of what they have to say. This is part of Moon's message of endorsement from John F. Kennedy, which takes the form of a letter to the United Nations. "Those of you at the United Nations, I am John Kennedy. I want to declare an extremely important thing to you. The fact that Kennedy is sending a message from the spiritual world to the United Nations is something that cannot be imagined in your world, and it is very significant news. Through attending lectures of the new truth, divine principle, and unification thought here in the spirit world, I have understood the direction and the goal that the world must take today. I want to let the UN know the following. Reverend Sun Myung Moon is the Messiah, the Savior, and the true parent of humankind. All humankind in the UN have to understand the ideology and works of Reverend Sun Myung Moon, and they have to accept his leadership and guidance." So that's Spirit World JFK giving their endorsement to Reverend Moon.
That's good. I mean, that is very like, honestly, very nice of him, because it takes a lot. You have to have a lot of ego to be the president and to really just bow down to this guy in Korea. Good on you, dead JFK. 36 presidents give him his endorsement. Wow.
Yeah.
That's turning me around on this guy.
It's actually worse. So 36 presidents endorse him while dead. 5 presidents have endorsed him 4 presidents have endorsed him while they were alive. So, yep.
Really? Well, endorsed him in what way?
Gone on tours with him, with his organizations, and said that given speeches for him and said that he was doing good work.
That makes sense.
We'll
not endorsing Korean sovereignty over the United States, but this dude's a cool guy because he's paying me. That makes sense. That sounds like one of them was Clinton, wasn't it?
Amazingly, no.
Wow, good for you, Bill.
Stunningly, Bill Clinton, no.
George W. Bush, yes. What about Carter?
Carter seems to have not liked him, which is good. So good on Carter.
Good. It doesn't have the best history with Korea, Carter, but at least he's got that right. Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of these sort of expeditions to the spirit realm, and in one of them, one of his followers is this guy named Lee. And so Lee goes to spirit world, and he finds marks. He has to wander for many days. He finds marks in this
he finds marks.
This
cool.
Incredibly shabby town yelling communist stuff at a bedraggled mass. And Lee spends 2 days arguing with him.
Is Ingalls there?
No, apparently
does Ingalls get to go to heaven?
There's no mention.
Maybe Ingalls got tired of it.
I don't know. Yeah, but Lee spends 2 days arguing with him, and it's I made a serious dent in him. Marx was incredibly embarrassed at the fact that I'd disproven him. He finds Stalin, who's barricaded in this mud hut. He was barricaded in a house, and there's mud huts all around it. And when he tries to go find Stalin has his guards beat him up, so he never gets to see Stalin.
That does. You know what? That does sound a little like Stalin.
Mussolini.
He did love to have guards do things.
Mussolini is reduced to a pathetic drifter. That
also sounds like Mussolini, to be honest. I mean, a lot of this is tracking.
Tojo is living alone in a house that he'd created where he has like a Shinto shrine to himself also tracks.
Again, does kind of sound like Tojo. Okay.
When he meets Lee, he cries and recants after hearing about Reverend Moon's teachings. So, and then gets forgiven.
Now that does not sound like Tojo. That does not sound like Tojo.
Moon meets Jesus at one point, and Jesus is incredibly grateful that Moon like has him married to some spirit. And then he says that he doesn't like, Jesus is like, yeah, I don't deserve Moon's love, but he's incredibly mad that people are focusing on the crucifixion.
Wow.
It gets better. It gets
God,
better.
that is so bold. That is so bold.
He's mad that people are focusing on the crucifixion and not the Washington Times, which is actually the most important thing that God's doing on earth, because the Washington Times is Moon's outlet.
So Jesus,
stop with the crucifixion. The crucifixion
guys,
doesn't matter.
stop talking about my brutal murder by the state and start talking about this fucking tabloid.
It's incredible.
It does. I would love it if Christ came back and did so primarily to sell subscriptions to the New York Examiner, or like the fucking what do you call it? What's the fake newspaper? The famous one. Shit, this would have been funny if I remembered the name.
Newsmax. knows.
Yeah, whatever. No, that wasn't the one in my mind. National Enquirer.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I botched it. Please continue.
So the last person that he finds who's important, I mean, he finds a lot of other people, but he finds Hitler, and Hitler is tied.
Oh, wow. Yeah, okay, good. I was wondering.
Hitler is tied eagle spread to a tree with a sign pinned to his chest that says King of the Nazis, and all the Jews that he killed are throwing bricks at him. Now,
see, that doesn't sound like a great afterlife for all the Jews that he killed.
So Moon sees this and is like, no, stop this. He's like, well, okay, so all these Jews can't like move on with their lives, right? Because of the Holocaust and because, of Hitler.
That does sound like a bad situation. Yeah. It is kind of messed up for him to imagine that for them.
His solution to this is forgiving Hitler so that, quote, a Jewish virgin can go to heaven. And so he forgives Hitler.
What?
Yeah, because Hitler's a spiritual drain in the sink, preventing all the Jews from going to heaven. And this is where I should mention this. Moon and like the Unification Church is like structurally anti-Semitic, like on a level
that sounds pretty anti-Semitic to me, Chris.
Moon has said multiple times in multiple places that Jews are responsible for the Holocaust because they killed Jesus, which is like literally the oldest anti-Semitic attack.
I thought it wasn't as big a deal as the Washington Times.
Apparently it is. It's apparently big enough of a deal that he's blaming the Jews for the Holocaust because they killed Jesus, and then he says this a lot, and he also has a lot of things that he said that are just like really bad. Like he says that gay people are dung-eating dogs, will be exterminated by God. There's a lot of like stuff like this. He's also so in his actual cult, he has like one of the big things he does is he has all of his followers like spend 18 hours a day selling flowers for him, and so there's enormous pressure. This is all your normal cult stuff, right? You have your enormous pressure not to leave. You have your like labor exploitation. You have your like you're stuck in this cult. You have your marriage stuff, and so this is the story. They have their battle with the deprogrammers in the 70s. When I was writing this episode, this is what I thought this episode was going to be about. But it turns out that while all of this stuff is real and it's happening and it's important, this is not the real story of Sun Myung Moon. That story, the story of how a Korean CIA influence operation and the fascist wing of the Yakuza helped turn a minor Korean cult into a world-class anti-communist political organization that funded death squads in 12 countries and built the modern religious right, starts with a coup in 1961.
Oh, yeah. Boy, howdy. That was a lot.
It's taking a turn.
All right.
We'll get through all of it. So in 1960, an uprising by Korean students and workers finally overthrew the horrific dictatorship of Syngman Rhee. Now, their heroic struggle gets them exactly 1 year. I think it's less than a year of democracy before Park Chung-hee, an incredibly fascist military officer, like Nobusuke Kishi met Park Chung-hee after Park Chung-hee took power, and even Kishi was like, hey, you can't say that fascist stuff anymore. Like he's so fascist that Kishi, like the arch Japanese fascist war criminal, was like, dude, you gotta tone it down. And so he takes power in this coup. And this coup is masterminded in large part by an army officer and politician named Kim Jong-pil. Pil. His name is Kim Jong Pil.
Kim Jong Pil. That does sound like a joke we would have made if Kim Jong Il had gotten addicted to Oxy.
No, he's one of the worst people in Korean history. He's famous for. So he leads a political party after there's the revolution. You get democracy back. And he manages to get himself installed as prime minister through a bunch of backroom dealing, even though he had a 4% approval rating. So
that sounds like all you need.
He's incredibly widely hated. Now, by 1961, Moon's church is firmly embedded in the army. Bo Hee-pak, last seen stealing a baby from his mother's arms and raising him as his own son, has the same rank in the army as Kim Jong-pil. Another Moonie is Kim Jong-pil's close lieutenant and translator and assistant, and several other Moonies also become translators for Kim Jong-pil. Now, it's unclear to me whether Moon knew this coup was happening. There's no direct evidence that he did, but it seems kind of likely because there's so many people who are in Moon's inner circle who are also in the inner circle of the coup plotters in the army that there's a pretty good chance that he knew that this coup was going to happen. What we do know for certain is that Kim Jong-pil founded the Korean CIA, which is it's like the regular American CIA, except they're also the internal secret police, which is a role the regular CIA normally delegates to the FBI. But they hunt down dissidents, they kill them, they're extremely bad. And several very high-profile Moonies get jobs in the new military dictatorship.
That seems like a bad call. I'm just going to predict that right now. Not going to go well.
It's not great. In 1962, Kim Jong-pil has a meeting with Bo Hee-pak where he decides to use the Moonies, who by this point have spread to the U.S., as a way to run influence operations on American politicians. Now, the result of this alliance is that the Unification Church gets legal status and recognition as a religion in Korea in 1962, and a whole bunch of Moonies wind up in the Korean embassy staff in the U.S. So this is going great.
Yeah, this is. I mean, there's a level to which it is kind of nice because we talk so much on this show about influence operations that the United States ran in other countries to fuck with their government and their media. And some now people talk about Russia doing that some, but this is good. I've never heard much about Korean influence operations in the United States. Yay,
Robert, do you know who else is running an influence operation on the United States?
Is it the Washington State Highway Patrol?
It's the Washington State Highway
absolutely.
Patrol.
that scans.
Yeah, it is. But it's also the products and services that support this show, of which the Washington State Patrol is one.
Really, our main sponsor.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Jo Winterstein, host of the Spirit Daughter podcast, where we talk about astrology, natal charts, and how to step into your most vibrant life. And I just sat down with a Minnie Driver.
The Irish traveller said when I was 16, you're going to have a terrible time with men.
Actor, storyteller, and unapologetic Aquarian visionary. Aquarius is all about freedom loving and different perspectives. And I find a lot of people with strong placements in Aquarius are misunderstood. A Sun and Venus in Aquarius in her 7th house spark her unconventional approach to partnership.
He really has taught me to embrace people sleeping in different rooms, on different houses, in different places, but just an embracing of the isness of it all.
If you're navigating your own transformation or just want a chart side view into how a leading artist integrates astrology, creativity, and real life, this episode is a must listen. Listen to the Spirit Daughter podcast starting on February 24th on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
What if mind control is real?
If you could control the behavior of anybody around you, what kind of life would you have?
Can you hypnotically persuade someone to buy a car?
When you look at your car, you're going to become overwhelmed with such good feelings.
Can you hypnotize someone into sleeping with you?
I gave her some suggestions to be sexually aroused.
Can you get someone to join your cult?
NLP was used on me to access my subconscious.
NLP, aka Neuro-Linguistic Programming, is a blend of hypnosis, linguistics, and psychology. Fans say it's like finally getting a user manual for your brain.
It's about engineering consciousness.
Mind Games is the story of NLP. Its crazy cast of disciples and the fake doctor who invented it at a New Age commune and sold it to guys in suits. He stood trial for murder and got acquitted. The biggest mind game of all? NLP might actually work.
This is wild.
Listen to Mind Games on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
What do you do when the headlines don't explain what's happening inside of you? I'm Ben Higgins, and If You Can Hear Me is where culture meets the soul, a place for real conversation. Each episode, I sit down with people from all walks of life, celebrities, thinkers, and everyday folks, and we go deeper than the polished story. We talk about what drives us, what shapes us, and what gives us hope. We get honest about the big stuff: identity when you don't recognize yourself anymore, loss that changes you, purpose when success isn't enough, peace when your mind won't slow down, faith when it's complicated. Some guests have answers. Most are still figuring it out. If you've ever felt like there has to be more to the story, this show is for you. Listen to If You Can Hear Me on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
China's Ministry of State Security is one of the most mysterious and powerful spy agencies in the world. But in 2017, the FBI got inside.
This is Special Agent Regal, Special Agent Bradley Hall.
This MSS officer has no idea the U.S. government is onto him. But the FBI has his chats, texts, emails, even his personal diary. Hear how they got it on the Sixth Bureau podcast.
I now have several terabytes of an MSS officer, no doubt, no question, of his life. And that's a unicorn.
No one had ever seen anything like that. It was unbelievable.
This is a story of the inner workings of the MSS and how one man's ambition and mistakes opened its vault of secrets.
Listen to the Sixth Bureau on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
We're back. Oh, boy, howdy. I love supporting the Washington State Highway Patrol Industrial
Complex. You can't even say it seriously. You can't even say it.
I know. It's Chris, please continue.
Now, okay, so when we left off, Moon has gotten embassy status by embedding a bunch of people in the Korean embassy in the U.S., and they're able to use the status in recognition and the recognition of the Unification Church as a religion in Korea to start getting legal recognition in the U.S. And once they established themselves in the U.S., they found something. Moon in particular is directly involved in this. They found something called the Korean Cultural and Freedom Foundation, or the KCFF, the first of, well, I don't know if it's the first, but it's the first American version of the many insufferable numbers of Unification Church friend groups. Now, the KCFF does two things. It acts as a slush fund and a friend group for the Unification Church, and it runs a Korean dance group called the Little Angels. Now,
oh boy, this is going to go a really bad place, isn't it?
Okay, so it's probably not as bad as what you think it's going to go, but it's not. It's weirder and not good either. Now, a lot of the people in this Korean Cultural Foundation, like, they don't understand that it's a church friend group, which is a common thing. There's a lot of people in church friend groups who don't understand what's happening. And with the KCFF, some of these people actually find out in the 70s and they all get purged. But in the 1960s, this seems like an innocuous, like, Korean cultural group running a Korean traditional dance group. And for people who follow cults, like, yeah, this is basically the Falun Gong Shen Yu 40 years earlier. But there's two important difference.
The Falun Gong is the cult that is responsible for all of those billboards in cities that are like China before communism, and it shows some lady dancing. Yeah, it's a weird right wing cult. We'll get into them one of these days.
This is like the OG version of this. Except there's two differences. And one of them is that the Little Angels are directly sponsored by the Korean government.
So it's like the Blue Angels, but little girls instead of aircraft.
Yeah. And the second difference is that Bo Hee-pak is using the Little Angels to smuggle money from Korea and Japan into the U.S. by stuffing the kids' socks full of cash.
Just like the Blue Angels.
Every single Blue Angel flown by a child, just moving wads and wads of $100 bills across the world. It's great. So the cash that the Little Angels are smuggling come from two important sources. One is Moon's chaebol. Chaebols are these Korean super conglomerates that basically dominate the Korean economy, and he just has one. And he has one of these conglomerates because Moon he's able to set one up in 1963, presumably with help from his allies in the military dictatorship. And this is the start of a massive economic empire that gets built up in Korea. They have a pharmaceutical company, a stone company, a titanium company. They make M16s for the Korean army. They make Vulcan miniguns. They make the M79 grenade launcher.
Ooh, that is a good one.
And they also make air guns that are used by Korean children for military training.
Yeah.
Because this is this is.
Well, I mean, if you're gonna train kids with guns, give them an air gun first. Don't go right to a full-on rifle.
They make those, and this is just the early stuff in Korea. Moon has literally hundreds of businesses across the world that bring in hundreds of billions of dollars a year. Hundreds of millions of dollars a year. Now, the other important source of funding is the rapidly expanding church in Japan, which is the financial empire of the cult. And there's a lot of ways that they do fundraising in Japan. One of the big ones is they run the seance scam. So they have a bunch of lawyers and they target people who just got life insurance payouts, and they have all these mystics around the country. And the mystics pretend to be able to channel their loved ones who like inevitably say that like, no, the only way I can find peace is if you give money to this mystic or like the church or one of the friend groups. And they make like hundreds of, like they'll take an entire life insurance payout. They'll make hundreds of thousands of dollars off of just individual ones, these scams. And the other source of funding is actually an old friend of the show. But before we can get to him, we need to talk about the World Anti-Communist League. But they're one of the worst organizations in human history. The World Anti-Communist League was founded in 1966 out of the fusion of two other anti-communist groups, the Asian People's Anti-Communist League and the Anti-Bolshevik League of Bloc of Nations. So the Anti-Bolshevik Bloc of Nations is basically an alliance of like the Romanian Iron Guard, the Croatian Ustasi, and then like a bunch of other Nazi collaborators and like people who did genocides in Eastern Europe.
Wholesome dudes.
There's a quote from the leader of the Ustasi who's like a true member of the Ustasi is the man who can carve a child out of a mother's womb with a bayonet. So these are great people.
Yeah. The Ustasi is like of the Nazis, one of the worst kinds.
People say this a lot about Nazis, but it's like these are the guys that even the SS looked at them and were like, this is a bit much. It's
like it consistently happens. Whatever's going on when it gets out to the Balkans, that's when it finds its most like its ultimate form. By the time anything makes cigarettes, fascism, by the time they hit the Balkans, they are the best version of themselves.
So that's one of the two groups. The Asian People's Anti-Communist League is basically like a creation of the intelligence services of the military dictatorships of Taiwan and South Korea. And in 1966, they do a fusion dance, and the World Anti-Communist League is born. Now, in 1967, Moon has a meeting with two old friends of the pod from a Nobusuke Kishi episode. Yohei Sasakawa, the Yakuza boss who created the Japanese black shirt ripoff and then visited Mussolini before getting off in his war crimes tribunal and becoming the self-described, quote, richest fascist alive through his control of the underworld and monopoly on speedboat gambling. The other guy is Yoshio Kodama, the Yakuza boss who escaped his own war crimes tribunal to fund the Liberal Democratic Party and Kishi's rise to power, and then also notably survived a kamikaze attack on his house in 1970.
Jesus, quite a rogues gallery.
It's good. This episode is like the Bastards Pod reunion episode. Like everyone who's ever been on the show. It's going to be here. So together with these two fascists, Moon creates the International Federation for Victory Over Communism and its Japanese branch, Shoko Rengo, which basically means victory over communism. Now, Shoko Rengo is basically a combination of Unification Church members and dudes from the Yakuza, with Sasakawa as its head and Kodama on as an advisor. And this alliance between the church and the Yakuza provides the church with, enforcers for its Japanese operation. It's also how they're able to do all these scams in Japan, because like normally in order to, if you're running scams that are like, you're taking $100,000 from someone, right? Like you have to have Yakuza permission. And this is how they get Yakuza permission. So like, run crime in Japan. And they also get access to Sasakawa's enormous stores of money. And on the other hand, Sasakawa gets legitimacy on the political stage for, his role as an anti-communist politician. Now, Shoko Rengo almost immediately becomes the Japanese branch of the World Anti-Communist League, and they hold the next one of the league's meetings at Sasakawa's boat racing range in Kyoto with full Moody support. Now, the Moonies move into a new office in Japan on land that they bought from one Nobusuke Kishi, who also openly supports Shoko Rengo and is the guy. I think this is like the last thing we said in our episode about him is he's the guy. He integrates the Unification Church into the Liberal Democratic Party, so they're just like a part of the Japanese establishment now. It's great. It's a good time.
That's wonderful. Cool.
Well,
this is
only going to
get
worse.
Sounds fun. Glad we're doing this.
Again, I really just want to keep mentioning this, that this organization's goal is Reverend Moon taking over the world and establishing a global theocracy with him as the head of it. Like that's what this thing is. And they keep getting integrated into the ruling class of the political parties that run like major industrialized nations. It's very cool and good. Now, with these powerful backers and sophisticated organizational capacity, the Moonies spread like wildfire. Moving into the 1970s, Moon gives like probably my favorite Moon quote about his operations. "I really keep the FBI busy trying to keep track of me. After the Washington Monument rally, their biggest question was what in the world I would do next. Even Satan is saying, what is Reverend Moon's next move? Where should I take my big guns? But most important is even God is asking, where are you going next? My plan is clear and simple. I am inexorably moving towards the absolute center of the universe."
So this guy's got a little bit of an ego. I mean, he's not just doing like the Beatles were bigger than Jesus offhanded thing. He's like, no, let me explain to you the ways in which God is impressed and baffled by me.
It's really incredible. No, the center, the inexorable center, the absolute center of the universe turns out to be the U.S., where Moon moves to an 18-acre estate called East Garden in the Hudson River Valley. Now, this place is nuts. Here's a description of it from the New Republic. His wife and children, who now numbered 13, had run of East Garden in its lavish manner, one of which contained a bowling alley, 6 pizza ovens, and a waterfall in the dining room. You know, while in the U.S., Moon starts running influence operations for the Korean CIA. One of those operations, it turns out, is funding the Heritage Foundation.
Oh,
yep.
Good.
So Ed Fulner, who's the Heritage Foundation's co-founder, writes for one of Moon's newsletters in the 70s, and the foundation, at like the very beginning of its existence, gets $2.2 million of KCIA money through one of Moon's friend groups. It rules.
Maybe this guy is the center of the universe.
Moon begins to develop just like an incredibly sophisticated network of allies in the new conservative rights. One of those figures is the infamously racist Strom Thurmond, who solves one of Moon's...
Oh, baby.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
And he solves one of Moon's visa issues. So Moon's about to be kicked out of the country in 1974 because his visa's up. And Strom Thurmond, who had become a Moon supporter through a meeting of the World Anti-Communist League, is just like, no, I'll just fix this for you. And so he's able to stay in the U.S.
Man.
Yeah, and so Strom Thurmond...
Thanks, Strom. Yeah. The one time you're not racist,
nope, it's for this. It's great. Now, this Strom Thurmond becomes Moon's like one of his first allies on Capitol Hill. But Moon is not content with one senator helping him out. With Watergate breaking, Moon sees his chance to get Richard Nixon on his side. So in 1973, Moon creates the National Prayer and Fast Committee to support Nixon during Watergate and stage protests, and like they bought a bunch of ads. So they do this pro Nixon thing, and they have this protest.
That's always where it starts with these like right wing ghouls too. Like that was the first time they did the thing that they had been doing for a while and actually faced consequences. And they were like, well, we got to re-engineer the entire world so that never happens again.
Yeah. Cool. So they hold this protest outside of the White House, and Nixon's giving a speech, and they like storm the barricades and interrupt the speech to like shout support for him. And this gets Moon a meeting with Nixon in 1974, which makes Nixon one of 6 presidents to either meet with or support Moon and his organizations, which, and again, I cannot emphasize this enough, is dedicated to taking over the world and crowning Moon as a theocratic god king. It's great. 6 presidents, most of whom are still alive. The church also started running another series of KCIA operations, including staging protests to support the interests of the South Korean dictatorship, and a wide-ranging operation to bribe hundreds of congressmen and infiltrate their offices by having pretty young women hang around their offices until they get a job. And this, like, finally, like at the point where they're literally running intelligence operations on members of Congress is like finally where the government gets involved.
Okay, well, it's good to know there's a line.
It's
great.
So Donald M. Fraser, who's the representative from Minnesota, launches an investigation into KCIA operations in the U.S. through the Subcommittee on International Organizations. Now, Fraser discovers just an enormous tangle of Mooney and KCIA money moving through friend groups. He finds an attempt to buy out a bank and do money laundering, a bunch of people just like stuffing wads of cash into briefcases, 3 senators' offices infiltrated, massive tax evasion, and a plan by Moon to use his businesses and church to conquer the U.S. Now, this scandal becomes known as Koreagate, and despite multiple requests by Fraser and the committee, and this the thing is, this is a bipartisan committee, right? Like, and both the Democrats and the Republicans on it are like, hey, you need to do something about this guy, and nothing happens because South Korea, it by this point is too important of an American ally for the U.S. to do literally anything about it running influence operations in the U.S.
Yeah, I mean, and what are you gonna do? They're all wrapped around our domestic politics too. Like, what would you actually do? I don't know.
Well, I mean, they could have put
don't let people make cults anywhere, but that's clearly not a reasonable thing to want.
Now, what does actually happen as a result of this is that Moon declares that Fraser is a communist and spends an enormous amount of money to defeat Fraser in his run for Senate, which Fraser winds up losing by a few votes. Now, a few nights later, someone tries to burn down his house. No one's ever caught for this.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it's great. That the only thing that happens.
I'm sure it's unrelated.
It's an investigation. Yeah. So meanwhile, Moon is searching the entire world for investment opportunities and begins a massive rush into Latin America. He poured over $100 million into Uruguay between 1977 and 1979, which resulted in Uruguay's military dictatorship signing a massive arms deal with South Korea. And lo and behold, Moon's companies in South Korea get a bunch of the contracts. Now, it's fun. We've talked about what the Uruguayan military dictatorship did during Troop Amaro's episode, so we're going to skip over that. But Moon is a close ally of the dictatorship, a pattern that is so regular that you can literally track which countries have military dictatorships by when Moon starts getting close to the government. Like, I have done this while researching episodes. I'll be like, when does dictatorship start? And I have Moon written down going there. I was like, oh, okay, I know when this happened now.
Yeah, and some of it's he's influencing the situation. Some of it's he's a smart motherfucker. And he's like, well, you look like you might be about to take over. I should probably get in good with your ass.
We'll get into more of that next episode. But right now, we need to talk about something extremely important. Fish.
Yes.
Now,
like the band, right? Fish. That I followed for 7 years during my youth.
In the sea that swim.
I'm not familiar with the concept. Please continue.
Something you are familiar with, that you are well aware of, is that all great cult leaders hear the call of the sea.
Yes, that is true.
And in 1980, Moon gives a speech called "The Way of the Tuna," which I'm going to read a bit of.
Oh, hell yes! Oh, this sounds good. This is sounding good.
I have the entire system worked out, starting with boat building. After we build the boats, we catch the fish and process them for markets, and then have a distribution network. This is not just on a drawing board. I have already done it. In the same speech, Moon calls himself the king of the ocean. And
dope. I mean, he's going to have to go pretty hard to beat the current owner of that title, our buddy L. Ron Hubbard, but I'm willing to listen.
We'll see. So this is the beginning. By 1980, it's already going. But this is sort of the origin point of Moon's attempt to build an enormous fleet of boats to take over the American fishing industry. So he buys a boat company.
See, I have to give him. I'm going to take points away for having such crass financial ends. L. Ron Hubbard didn't take to the sea and build a navy to make money. He took to the sea and made a navy in order to get 20-year-olds to search for gold he buried in a past life that he knew wasn't there.
Moon's stated justification for this is that he wants to feed the entire world by getting a bunch of fish. I think it is a lesser fishing expedition than Hubbard's, but it's still, I think, incredibly impressive.
That does show an amazing amount of faith in the ocean's ability to keep making fish.
It's pretty incredible. Well, we'll get into a bit of what happens there. So he buys buys a boat company and then uses the boat company to make boats for this fleet, and he puts $1 million into it. And this operation is the beginning of the Great Moody Fleet, and it's called the True World Group. And in classic cult fashion, its founders sleep in these communal apartments, and they work horrendous hours for this fishing dream. And it works. Here's from the Chicago Tribune. True World is so ubiquitous that 14 of 17 prominent Chicago sushi restaurants surveyed by the Tribune said they were supplied by the company. Now, because this is a capitalist enterprise and a cult, they immediately start doing crimes. Their Alaska branch gets convicted of a felony for going enormously over the boat's carrying capacity and endangering the crew by having a boat that is enormously too heavy to float.
I gotta say, I respect, though, we're not just going to endanger the ability of the ocean to continue to support life. We're going to endanger our fishermen, too. You know what? Both at once, baby.
Not only that, they are also going to endanger everyone who eats this fish. So when Pod alumni, the Food and Drug Administration, tried to inspect a warehouse in Detroit in 2005, they found, quote, gross and unsanitary conditions. Now, the manager tries to keep the inspectors out and says that his supervisor is, quote, a great man, that he was part of a new religion, and if we took advantage of him, then God help you. From the Tribune again. Later, according to that FBI report, an employee wearing a ski mask approached one female inspector, put his thumb and forefinger in the shape of a gun, pointed at her and said, "Pow, you're out of uniform."
Oh.
It's cool. Amazing. They're just threatening the FDA. It's great.
I mean, I think most of what we know about the FDA is that they're probably going to just take it.
Basically, no. So, the FDA.
That's good for them. Good for them. Good for you, FDA.
The FDA has done like an enormous number of terrible crimes, but they are not on the payroll of big fish. So they try to come back to inspect this facility again. They get a court order and they're like, okay, we're going to come inspect this facility. And the Moonies are just like, okay, we'll just shut it down instead of dealing with this because they're doing so many crimes that they were like, yeah, okay, we will lose this entire facility rather than have the FDA inspect it one time. Now, the other part of this scheme is that they're basically attempting to use, those mass wedding ceremonies. They're trying to use them to get the Japanese members of the church, who are like the most committed members of the church, citizenship, so they can bypass American fishing restrictions about who can fish in American waters. Now, this is kind of a problem because for a long time, like Moon's weddings weren't considered legally binding weddings.
That makes sense because he's just a guy. Because he's just a guy,
So,
and like mass weddings that might not be recognized by like law because maybe the law's like, well, you have to. There's like papers and stuff.
I think eventually they start getting considered actual marriages, but like this plan doesn't really work.
Yeah, it seems like there'd have to be a process you would go through.
But the problem is that even without this sort of like the influx of Japanese fishermen, this works. And you have this interesting mix of so some people who are working for this fishing company are like in the cult, and some of them aren't. And there's this whole thing inside the company where like the people who are in the cult get promoted faster, and the people who aren't in the cult kind of get like subtly or like, hey, take this like propaganda thing. But this fishing group takes over the fishing industry. Like in 2005 alone, the True World Group made $250 million. Yeah,
wow.
and
that's not bad.
And again, like in 15 of 19 sushi restaurants that the Chicago Tribune interviewed were like, yeah, no, we buy our fish from the Moonies. It's like,
yeah, I mean, that is Chicago sushi,
true,
right?
They have operations in all 50 states, and it's very similar in everywhere else because they've seized control of the American fishing industry. That on this somewhat happy note, with the great Mooney fleet thriving and Moon's call to the sea fulfilled, we're going to leave it today, and we're going to come back next time to see Moon fund a horrific series of war crimes in the name of world peace.
Well, I gotta say, Chris, it takes a lot for me to be impressed by a cult leader, but this guy is pretty good cult leader. Gotta give it to him.
You haven't seen shit from Moon yet. Like this of this is the warm up intro to the actual stuff.
He's laying the bones. Yeah, he's putting down the foundation so he can really do some crimes. Oh baby, yeah. This is my favorite part, when the cult leader's at the top of the fucking roller coaster and you just know they're about to go 0G, baby. Chris, thank you. Do you have anything to plug? What do you do? Who are you? Where do you work?
I work for Sophie at
that's right.
Cool Zone Media. I work on It Could Happen Here. I do some other stuff. I'm on Twitter at itmechr3. I do that.
Yeah.
Robert, do you have anything to plug?
I have a novel. You can pre-order it now. If you Google After the Revolution on AK Press, you can go buy it. And then you will have a signed copy of my novel that's printed on paper. Wow.
What if mind control is real?
If you could control the behavior of anybody around you, what kind of life would you have?
Can you hypnotically persuade someone to buy a car?
When you look at your car, you're going to become overwhelmed with such good feelings.
Can you hypnotize someone into sleeping with you?
I gave her some suggestions to be sexually aroused.
Can you get someone to join your cult?
NLP was used on me to access my subconscious.
Mind Games, a new podcast exploring NLP, aka neuro-linguistic programming. Is it a self-help miracle, a shady hypnosis scam, or both? Listen to Mind Games on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
You can scroll the headlines all day and still feel empty. I'm Ben Higgins, and If You Can Hear Me is where culture meets the soul. Honest conversations about identity, loss, purpose, peace, faith, and everything in between. Celebrities, thinkers, everyday people, some have answers, most are still figuring it out. And if you've ever felt like there has to be more to the story, this show is for you. Listen to If You Can Hear Me on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Amanda Knox, and in the new podcast, Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby, we unpack the story of an unimaginable tragedy that gripped the UK in 2023. But what if we didn't get the whole story?
Evidence has been made to fit.
The moment you look at the whole picture, the case collapsed.
What if the truth was disguised by a story we chose to believe?
Oh my God, I think she might be innocent.
Listen to Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Special Agent Regal, Special Agent Bradley Hall.
In 2018, the FBI took down a ring of spies working for China's Ministry of State Security, one of the most mysterious intelligence agencies in the world.
The Sixth Bureau podcast is a story of the inner workings of the MSS and how one man's ambition and mistakes opened its vault of secrets.
Listen to The Sixth Bureau on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.